Hello, I haven't made a video in quite a while, so I'm going to make one today. I have a little bit of time, and this is really not an informative video or anything like that. It's just going to be a watch me edit. I'm just going to edit a picture. I'm not going to really be explaining a whole lot. I just know that I enjoy watching other people edit, whether I learn anything or not. It's just interesting and fun to watch how other people do things. So that's what I'm going to do, and I probably won't edit it or anything. I'll just upload it as is. But we had quite a bit of snow, so I took my daughter out and we just played around a little bit. But I use Bridge over Lightroom because I feel like it's just a little bit simpler. A lot of the Lightroom features I don't really use, and I feel like Bridge is faster. Like, it's just faster for me to go through and pick the ones I want and delete the ones I don't want and copy them into different folders. It's just the way I do it. A lot of people think Lightroom is easier, but I don't really use a lot of presets or anything like that. So it's just simpler for me to use this program. So I've already edited a couple of them. Here's one. And I want to use these same settings that I used. I make some small adjustments in the beginning in Camera Raw, and then I load it into Photoshop and polish it up. So I want this same look, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to Develop Settings and Copy Settings, and then I'm going to find the photo I want to do next, and let's see. I should have already picked this out instead of wasting time, but I kind of like one of these. So what I'm going to do is select all these and open them in Camera Raw. And this opens up pretty quick, so I'm going to make sure I got a good focus. Okay, I like this one, so I give it 5 stars. And this one, I think I'm going to go with this one. So normally I would hit Control and unclick that one and then delete the ones I didn't pick, so they're gone. But I like to do that in the beginning and go through all of them, and that way all my 5 stars is all I have left, and I know those are the ones I edit. And then once I edit them, I label them with approved. So that way I know I've already adjusted that one. It's already been through Photoshop. It's done. No label. Alright, so now I've already copied the settings from the other photo. So I'm going to apply them. Develop Settings, Paste Settings. Click OK. I made sure all those were clicked, and now I'm going to open it back up into Camera Raw. And I will show you what I've done. Normally my photos are very warm and sunny, but I wanted to take a little different route with these. Since her clothes were gray, I wanted to give it a cold gray background and give it like a cold wintry feel. It was snowing while we were taking these, but you can't see any snowflakes in this one. You can see a little bit in her hair, and you know, an occasional one. So I will add in a snow overlay. Ben is a very hard subject to photograph. When you take him out, he just wants to run and play, so he's not really cooperative, but just the fact that he let her hold him for a second to where I could get a picture is a win. Even though I couldn't get him to look at me, he was wanting to watch the cars go by, but we're happy with what we got. So I do want to warm up her skin a little bit, but first off I will say this is what I always do. When every photo, no matter what, if I'm going to make it a warm photo or it just black and white, it doesn't matter. I always bring down the highlights, bring down the whites, I bump up the shadows just a tad and bring down the blacks. And I bring down the blacks until I feel like it's, you know, got enough contrast just to make my subject pop a little bit. Then I rarely ever touch the exposure, ever, unless it is so underexposed. If it's way overexposed, I won't use it at all. But if it is underexposed quite a bit, I will use the exposure to bump it up. But the only reason I would ever use a photo like that is if I just didn't get that facial expression in a different photo. So it's like either don't have that pose or use the exposure slider. But only if it's underexposed by more than a half a stop will I even touch this slider. If I want to brighten it up, I always do it from the tone curve. And I will pull it up and brighten her up just a little bit. I'm going to warm her skin up in Photoshop. But if I wanted to do it from here, let me find the split toning. I have added blues to the shadows. 231 and 15 saturation. And that gave all the darks, all the shadows, a blue hue that helped cool it off. So if you wanted to warm her skin up, you could go to the highlights and pick like an orangey color and then just bring up the saturation and warm her a little bit. But it adds it to the highlights in the background as well, and I don't want that. I want to keep the background nice and cool. So that's why I'm going to adjust that in Photoshop. However, you could do it with the adjustment brush and add a little bit of temperature just to her. You know what? I think we're just going to do that. That's pretty simple. I just added a little bit of warmth to her face. Okay, so never mind. I'm not going to do that in Photoshop. Okay, and then over here, I have taken all the saturation out of the yellows and the greens. That is what, let me put this back up to where it was. That's what took these trees and turned them gray. And since her clothes are gray, it didn't affect them. So, I mean, it worked out well. I did take the saturation out of the blues too, so it kind of toned down the gray in her clothes. So that way my color palette between the background and her clothes blend. And right here, if you wanted to brighten her skin, skin is controlled by the oranges, so you could brighten up her face or darken her face. I rarely ever do that, but if your entire picture is a little bit darker and you just wish the skin was a little brighter, that's where you would do it from. If you had some color casting, you can fix that in the saturation. Like if the really red face, like if it's really cold or really hot out, you could kind of eliminate some of that in the saturation. And the same here with the hue. But anyway, I rambled about that, but oranges is what targets the skin. And Ben has a pink leash on because he broke his, so we had to use Shay's, which it really doesn't matter, whatever color, but his collar is red. He had a matching red leash, so I'm probably going to take the saturation out of that and just blend it in with her clothes. And then from there, I don't do anything else. All these are just the same. And then I will open it into Photoshop. And while that opens, I'm going to get some more coffee. Okay, now that I have it open in Photoshop, I am going to start with the crop. It's usually the first thing I do. I always crop everything to 5:7, and I'm going to pull this and line this line up with her eye. And the next thing I want to take away is the saturation of that collar, and I'm going to just make a hue saturation layer, take out the saturation and take out some of the lightness. Click on the mask and hit Control-I, and that turns it to a black mask, which hides everything. You can see Ben's cherry eye popped out, so we'll have to take care of that. And then I'm going to take a white brush and paint over that. You don't have to be real precise because it's going to blend. Just so your eye isn't drawn to that different color. I almost want to do it to the collar too, but just to make the colors let me see how that looks. I don't know, now it just looks like he's got a... I wonder if I could clone that out all together. So I'm going to add a blank layer, and I'm going to grab my clone tool, and I'm going to sample from his fur and just kind of clone over that and see. I don't know, it looks kind of weird. I don't know. It looks kind of weird. So I'm just going to leave it. And I'm just going to leave this collar. Oh. There, I'm just going to leave this collar red. Okay. So now I want to I'm going to take the saturation out of his eye. Just to kind of blend it in with the rest of his eyeball. That's good. Now I don't really see anything else in the background that bugs me that needs to go away. These sticks are a little... I probably would go ahead and get rid of these sticks, and I'm going to use the patch tool for that. Just kind of... It'd be different if those branches would have had snow on them or something, but kind of get rid of that. And then I'm going to add a new blank layer, and I'm going to grab a brush, soft round brush, and I'm going to bring my opacity down to like 10%, and I'm going to sample a color from the snow. So it's going to be white, but I want like a whitish, grayish color. And I'm going to go over these trees in the background just slightly, just to lighten them up a little bit. I'm going to go out, fan out from her, just to kind of blend them into the snow a little more. And it just softens that background, get that corner. Just softens the background even more. And don't worry if you got spillage over into your subject. We're going to add a layer mask. black brush and make sure she doesn't have any on her. Alright, and I believe that is all I want to do to the background. Oh, I guess it would help if I put my opacity back up. I'm like, why isn't that coming off of her? Because I had it down on 10% still. Okay, so now I'm going to reduce the opacity a little bit. You always have a tendency to overdo things, so it never hurts to reduce it anyway, just to make sure you didn't go overboard. Some people do not flatten their images and keep all the layers. It depends on what I'm doing. I usually, the photos that I take for myself, I'll experiment with the different ones, but if I am doing someone else's photos in a session, I might save one as a layered copy so I can reference back to it, so I can make all the photos from the same scene match. And if you would like me to do a video where I edit 3 or 4 photos from the same session together, how I do that, leave a comment and I will do that. I'll show you how I choose them and take them from Camera Raw into Photoshop, and how I apply all the same settings to each photo. But okay, so now I want to work on her face a little bit. I just want to brighten it up, the highlights. I don't really change a lot about the face, but if there is a blemish, anything that is not there permanently, I will get rid of. All blemishes go. If there's like a stray hair, it was a little windy, so we couldn't really control that much. So I'm not going to be real picky about the stray hairs, but anything that looks like I can easily remove, I'm going to do it. Like this big chunk, I highly doubt. I'm going to hit Control-J and copy this back layer in case I doubt this big chunk is going to look decent, and the amount of time it would take me, to me, is not worth it. I may as well just leave it. Actually, that's not bad. The amount of time it would take me to sit and get that is really not, no, that really makes it too dark, so I'm just going to leave that. And I just want to brighten up her face a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a curves layer, and I'm going to pull up in the center, but I'm going to invert that mask to black and then paint it on where I want it. And I want it almost where you would highlight if you were doing makeup. And then I am going to create a dodge and burn layer. And to do that, I have this made into an action dodge and burn gray layer, but I'm going to show you how to make it. I do layer, new layer, and when this pops up, I use I turn this to soft light, and then checkbox fill with soft light neutral gray color. And now when you paint on here with white, it will dodge it, make it brighter. If you paint on it with black, it will burn it and make it darker. So let's back up, and I'm going to use a black brush with 10% opacity on the brush, and I'm just going to burn around the edges, burn the shadows. Anything that has a shadow, hit it with a little bit, and it will make your subject stand out a little more. Okay, then I'm going to zoom way in. I usually don't do too much to the eyes unless it's like an extreme close-up, but I'm just going to hit around here, her eyelash a couple times, and then I'm going to switch my color to white and hit this highlight in her eye. And then when I turn that off and on, it's a very subtle difference. but it makes a difference. It brings her off the background even more. You can even go a step further and dodge and burn all the shadows and highlights of her clothes. Okay, so now I'm going to sharpen, but I'm going to select sharpen. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to go to filter, sharpen, unsharp mask. These are the settings I use for a lot of things. I will make sure. I might need a little more, a little less, but typically this is it. I have an action that does that too, but I'm doing it all step by step, because you can record your own actions. Like the things that I do over and over, I take the time to make an action out of it, and it saves me time. It does not take me this long to do this. It's just taking longer because I'm talking. Then I'm going to add a layer mask to it and Control-I to invert it, and then I'm going to take a 100% brush and I'm going to just paint it on where I want sharpened. So I'm going to sharpen the eye, the tip of her nose, her lips, and then I'm going to hit her hair and her scarf, because there's lots of texture there, and just kind of all around the edge, all of this. And I'm going to hit all of the dog, because since he's a little bit softer, a little bit out of focus, because he's not like lined up with her. So I was using a pretty wide aperture, I think it was 2.8. So he's not real clear. I just kind of don't want to sharpen any skin, is basically. So I'm going to take the black brush and make sure I didn't get. And I'm going to leave her cheeks rosy because it was cold, and I think that just goes along with the photo. Okay, so now after that, I am going to create, I can't remember what settings I use for matte. I recorded it into an action, so I haven't done it by hand, but I have this matte and I play it, but I'll show you. It is a curves layer. This is how I make the matte. I pull down here and raise up the bottom, but then I decrease the opacity to 20%, and then just puts a little matte effect on it. And then I'm going to create another curves layer and bring up the center, invert it, and then I'm going to take a white brush, big, and I'm going to start at this corner up here, and I'm going to drag it down the center of the photo, because I don't want the entire photo, but I do want it to have kind of like a spotlight effect. And if you think that you want to add back a little contrast, you can take a layer, any layer you want. You're not going to make any adjustments here, you're just going to change the blending mode to soft light, and then bring this down to about 10%. And just kind of adds back just a little touch of the contrast that the matte takes away. Seems counterproductive, but it is different. But anyway, now to make it, give it another little bit more of a wintry feel, I'm going to grab on my foreground color, I'm going to grab a blue. And then in my background color, I'm going to also add a blue, but I'm going to make it a little lighter. And then I'm going to make a gradient adjustment layer. I'm going to change this to radial and reverse. I'm going to choose that. When you click in there to choose that, the first one will be your foreground and background color. So I want the blue, the dark blue, to the light blue center. And let's scale this up to about there, to where the dark blue is just right there on the edges. Click OK, and then you're going to change the blend mode to soft light. Look at that. But then I bring this way down to like 20%. And then on the layer mask, I'm going to take black and brush it off of her. Oops, hit the wrong key. Make sure you're on the layer mask. And there we go. And I do believe that I am done with this one. If you wanted, you could create a bright light here up. I do this a couple different ways. I stamp on a light ray, or I do a gradient in a light color, or sometimes I do it where I'll take a curves layer and I'll just bring it way up, invert the mask, and then come into my brush and pick a light ray. There's tons of these for free all over the internet. Just search light ray brush, and I will pick one. Let's see, here's one. Oh, that's not a free one. This one is. But you don't have to buy them. There's tons of free ones out there, but I purchased some. And then with a white brush, stamp this on, and it'll bring that through. And then you can decrease the opacity, and then I'll go back to a regular brush and make sure it's completely off her face. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. I meant to use a black brush. There, and make sure it's not on her face. But I will keep it on the edges of her hat and her hair. Now let me go down to 30%, and it's a little bright, just to give her a little bit. Okay. Let's see, there's that light just coming down. I think if you alt-click the mask, it shows you what the mask looks like. And that's that one. So let me go to here, make a snapshot, and I'll show you. This is the before with the Lightroom adjustment, or the camera raw adjustments, and this is after my Photoshop adjustments. Not a big change, I'm just kind of polish it up a little bit. So I'm sorry this was so long and rambly, and if you got bored, I'm sorry. But if you have any requests, just comment it or send me a message or something, and I'll see what I can do. I'm going to try to be a little more active here, but I always think that and it never happens, so I don't want to make any promises. But thanks for watching.